Welcome back to the Fretboard. I'm Mark French. I'm a professor at Purdue University and I do guitars. Today I'd like to talk to you about tuning machines, those things up on the headstock that help us keep the guitar in tune. Now every guitar's got them. Here's an electric guitar right here. This one was made for me by my friend Doug Hunt, who makes really nice guitars. He did this one out of actually reclaimed wood, which makes it just that much nicer. Sounds great, and he did just a bang-up good job on this. Now as an electric guitar, this has 6 tuners on the headstock. Some guitars have 6 in line like this one, and some have 3 on a side. And it's really more of a design decision than anything else. Most of the Fender guitars, essentially all of the Fender electrics, have 6 in-line tuners. Gibsons tend to have 3-3, which is 3 on one side and 3 on the other. But again, it's just a design decision. Mechanically, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so here's the headstock on Doug's guitar, and you can see right there, these are kind of an old style, a vintage style tuner, and there's little boxes here, and there's little knobs sticking out, and you can see the tuning pegs here and how the strings wrap around them. It's not clear what's in there. We'll go over that here in a minute. Now here's a nice little Fender guitar. This is a Fender, inexpensive. I think it's probably plywood. No, I guess it does. It has a looks like it has a solid top on it. The back and sides are laminated. I like this one a lot. This one actually worked out really well. I've been messing around with this one. I've been kind of hot rodding it, so it's got some funny features on it. That red nut up there, that's actually Corian. I got rid of the factory nut, and these yellow saddles down here replaced the white plastic one that came with it. I've also moved some frets and some other things. But it's got 3-3, 3 on the side headstock, 3-3 sometimes they call it. Here's the Fender headstock shape. Now I mentioned last time, headstock shapes are kind of the logo for a guitar designer. You know, if you want to copy a guitar, you can copy everything from here down, and mostly it's okay. But from here up, that shape and whatever decoration are on it are the guitar company's signature, and you can't copy that. It'd be like if you made a car and you decided to put a Chevy bow tie on it. That's not cool. You can't do that. That'll get you in trouble. But this has fairly standard looking tuners on the back of it. These are cast here, and they've got a little worm gear in there, and there's 3 on a side. So it's got the same gear system in here, the handle there, and then these posts that come out. And the way this works is if I want to change the pitch of a string, I change the tension by moving the tuner. And that's all that's going on here. There's not much theory, and there's no magic to it at all. Well, if you're playing guitars or if you're building guitars, it probably helps to know a little bit more about the tuning machines themselves. What is it they're actually doing, and why do I really care? So I'm going to hang this thing back up. Tuning machines are built in large quantities. I understand most of them come from China, but certainly not all. They mostly look like this when you get them. All right? This is a standard kind of tuning machine. There's a company called Gotoh that makes good ones. Gotoh and Grover are 2 of the real big ones. And this is all there is to it. Okay? There's a little, I'll show you right there. There's the little gearbox there. This is a casting here. There's the handle, and it's got a little knob, I guess. It's got a little screw on it. So one of the things you can do is you can put different kinds and different sizes of knobs on them. And there's this thing here called a barrel. That thing right there. Okay? That's what goes through the headstock. There's a hole in the headstock, and it's usually either 3/8 of an inch or 10 millimeters. And there's what it looks like. And this is what holds it on. There's a little threaded barrel. The inside of this has threads in it. Okay? Well, it's nice for me to hold this up to the camera. Maybe we could zoom in a little bit and get a little closer idea of what's going on, okay? Okay, here we are back at my little desk here at work, and there's that tuner I was showing you. Okay, the way this works, that goes through a little hole in the headstock, and when I turn this knob, that post turns. We wrap the strings around the post, and when we turn it, it tightens the string up. Well, what's this look like on the inside? Well, let's get some good tuners out here and see. This is a company called, wait, get the dust off it here. This is a company called Waverly, and they make kind of the real high-end production tuners. There are people out there who make really nice, very handmade, very expensive tuners. But if you want to get good production tuners, Waverly's about the best of the bunch. Okay, and I'm picking these because these are going to go on a guitar that I'm about to build. And this is what a tuner looks like on the inside. Okay, this brand, this type of tuner doesn't have a cover over it, and that's one of the styles you see. So you can see how this works. There's a little base plate here, right there. This one happens to be bent out of sheet metal. Sometimes they're cast. Okay, there's what's called the worm right there, and there's a gear. This one looks like this one might be made out of bronze, and there's two little holes on it here. Okay, those put screws through there, and that's what keeps it from rotating. Okay, while it's in the guitar. Somewhere in here there's going to be some bushings that go with it. Okay, there's a package with bushings and little screws in it. So what'll happen is when I go to put this in the or install these on a guitar, I'm going to drill a hole for that for each of the tuners. And this tuner post is probably about 1/4 of an inch. And then for those little bushings, I'll over drill those and push the bushings in. Tuner spacing is one of those things that designers have to think about. And the two tuner spacings I see most are 1 3/8 and 1 1/2 inches. That means from the center of one post to the center of the next one is either 1 3/8 or 1 1/2 inches. Okay, so this is what a good high quality worm gear tuner looks like. This one, oops, see if I can do this here. This one looks a little different, but inside it's exactly the same. Inside this casting, there's one of these. On the end of this little shaft right here, you can see the end of it right there, or a little cap maybe, is one of these worm gears. Okay, and the only difference is this one is sealed. There's a press fit cap on it, and there's some permanent lubricant in there. And the other one, that little screw, there's one little screw hole right there instead of two. This is a little more traditional. This is a little more modern, but they work the same way. Another difference is when you're working on classical guitars. Now this is a brand called Schaller. It's a German brand. I love Schaller tuners. These are really nice. I use them a lot. And this one is a classical tuner. Now, classical guitars have nylon strings, and the tension's a little lower. The string itself, there we go. The string itself is nylon instead of steel, so it's a lot softer. And you use different kinds of tuners. Now, classical tuners are almost all 3 on a plate. Okay, and here's what a really nice classical tuner looks like. Okay, so it's got the worm gear right there. You can see all 3 of them are hooked together on one plate, so you install this as one complete unit. It's got holes in there to hold it to the headstock. All right, and instead of this steel post like you see on the steel string tuners, this one's got a nylon or Delrin, whatever this stuff is, but a plastic drum on there. Okay, but the same thing, if you watch that little hole right there, as I turn this, see how that moves? But it doesn't move very much. Okay, and these things are anti-symmetric. There's 3 on each side, and you can see that the gears are set up so that there's a left and a right tuner. In fact, these ones are nice. This one even has an L cast into it, and there's an R cast in on that one. Okay, so. And it's typical for classical tuners to have some decoration on them, like the what you see right there. Now, one other thing to think about is what are the gear ratios? Okay, those are have worm gears on them, so the gear ratio could be just about anything. It's typical to see that the lowest gear ratio you normally see is about 14:1, which is 14 turns of that to make that turn around once. Okay, these Waverlys I think are 15:1, I'm not sure what these Gotoes are. I think these may be 15 or 16 to 1. There's a brand called Grover I use a lot. There's a type called Grover Stay-Tights. They look a lot like this, but they're 18 to 1. I use those an awful lot. When I make acoustic guitars, I almost always use the Grover Stay-Tights. I like having that extra precision while I'm tuning. There's even a brand by Graphtec called Ratio Tuners, and those have a different tuning ratio for every tuner on the guitar. Graphtecs look like this. You can see that each gear has a different number of teeth on it, and the reason is that this tuner is changing tension, but what it's really doing is it's really stretching the string. It's really changing the length of the string. Engineers would call this strain. Since the strings all have different diameters, you need different strains for a specific change in pitch on each string. So that's reflected in the tuner design, and each tuner has a different gear ratio. Now, I haven't tried these yet, but I'm looking forward to getting some. I'm saving my pennies up, and I'll get some of those at some point and try them out. Okay, the thing I haven't talked about so far are headless guitars. There is such a thing as a headless guitar, where the tuners are not on the headstock, they're actually on the other end. These are becoming a little more popular. As far as I know, the idea was made, if not invented, it was at least made popular by a series of guitars by Ned Steinberger. If you've ever watched Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, George Carlin at the end of the movie hands the two dudes these funny rectangular looking guitars. Those are Steinbergers. Now, I don't have a headless guitar here. I haven't bought one yet, but I was at the Music Instrument Trade Show in Anaheim last year, and they were all over the place. Okay, this is probably my favorite of the electric guitars I saw at NAMM last year. This is by a company called Strandberg. They started kind of with a Super Strat, one of the follow-on kind of heavy metal Strat-looking guitars, and refined it quite a bit. It's headless, and it also has fan frets. So the headless part of it, you can see on the right-hand side, there's a fitting with some screws on the end. That holds the free end of the strings tight. The ball end of the strings going on the left-hand side of the picture here, those 6 black barrels with the screws on the end of them, are how you tune the string. There's some threads inside those, and so to stretch the string, rather than you use a worm gear, you use that threaded barrel on the left to just stretch the string out and set the pitch. Now, the frets don't look quite right. They don't look like they're quite parallel to one another, and they're not. It's called a fan fret. Rather than the frets being absolutely parallel to one another, they all point towards an imaginary point below the guitar, and so they look like they're part of a fan. I've heard a couple of motivations about fan frets. One is it gives you slightly different scale lengths for the different strings, and the other is that your left arm is obviously pivoted at the elbow, and it makes it a little more comfortable to play. I haven't bought a fan fret guitar yet, but will eventually, and when I do, I'll probably do a video on it. So there you go. There's what you need to know about tuners, and how they work, where to get them, what they're like. I hope this helps, and we'll talk to you next time.